Chapter 7.1. Well, in this chapter, we're going to see the verb estar, which is one of the forms of the verb to be. The verb to be in Spanish splits into different verbs. One is the verb ser, that we saw in the previous chapters, and the verb estar. The verb estar basically is used in Spanish when you want to indicate location, when you want to say where you are. You say, I am in Puerto Rico, so you say, yo estoy en Puerto Rico. And also is used in Spanish to indicate condition. For example, when you say, I am sick, I am tired, condition basically means it's a temporary situation that you are tired for a while and then you're better. You don't feel tired anymore if you rest. So the conditions in Spanish is also a temporary situation. We saw that the verb ser is used more for permanent situations when you say the building is big. So in this case, the building is big and always will be big. So in this case, you say el edificio es grande. But a condition is different because a condition is something that is temporary, something that you feel sad, for example, today because something happened to you, but you don't feel sad all the time. So you just, it's for a temporary, for a period of time. It could happen sometimes that, for example, you can say John is a sad person, meaning, it's a characteristic. In that case, when it's something that is the way the person is, you can say ser. You can say, él es una persona triste, he's a sad person. But if it's a condition, you will use estar. You say, él está triste, he is sad today because something happened to him. Situations in which we use location, for example, we have yo estoy en la clase, I am in the class today. Marta está en Puerto Rico, Marta is in Puerto Rico. O Luis está en su casa, Luis is in his house. So you see, in all these situations, we're indicating location. Conditions. For example, ella está cansada, she is tired. O Juan está triste, John is sad. So the way we conjugate the verb estar is an irregular verb because in the yo form you have to say yo estoy. Yo estoy is I am. Tú estás is you are. Él, ella, usted está. He, she, or you are. Nosotros estamos, we are. Vosotros estáis. En ellos, ellas, ustedes están. Remember, the translation in English is the same as the verb ser. Is I am, you are, he is, and so on. Okay. Now, another thing that we're going to see today is when you say I am working or I am studying or I am reading. In those cases, this is called the present progressive and is similar to the present tense. In the present tense, you say I work, and the present progressive, you say I am working. So the difference is that the present progressive is more happening at this moment, and it's a compound verb. It has the verb estar and also has the ing ending. I am working or I am studying. Now we're gonna see now how we form in Spanish the ing ending in Spanish. Now we have three group of verbs, right? So the first group is are endings. For example, verbs like comprar or estudiar or viajar. If you want to say buying or studying or traveling, what you do in Spanish is to drop the ending are at the end, right? And you add ando. So when you say yo estoy viajando, you are saying I am traveling. Luisa está estudiando, you are saying Luisa is studying. Nosotros estamos comprando, you are saying we are buying. Okay? So remember, if the verb ends with are, what you do is you drop the are ending and then you add ando, and ando is the ing ending in English. Working, traveling, and so on. Now, if the verb is ending with er, like comer, o beber, o conocer, in this case we do the same, we drop the ending, but instead of ando, we use the ending iendo. Iendo is ing ending when the verb is ending with er. So you say, yo estoy comiendo, I am eating. Luisa está bebiendo, Luisa is drinking. Nosotros estamos conociendo, we are knowing or meeting. So in this case, you see the ending is yendo. Now, in the third group, verbs ending with ir, for example, escribir or salir, the ending is also yendo. So for the second and the third group, the ending is the same. So you say, yo estoy saliendo, I am leaving, or you say, Luisa está escribiendo, she is writing. Okay? So remember, this is the endings for ing endings in Spanish. But besides that, there is a group of exceptions. Let's see the exceptions to the rule. Well, the first exception that we have here is that some verbs in Spanish, for example, leer or creer or oír, you see what they have here at the end, they have two vowels here, and you know they usually are verbs ending with er and ir. Those are the endings. The group R is not affected by this, but the verbs ending with ir and er, if you see a verb that is ending with two vowels at the end, like leer or creer or oír, what is going to happen is that the yendo ending that we were using with the second and the third group is going to change to yendo with y. So instead of I, it's going to be y. So you're going to say Pedro está leyendo. Peter is reading. But you see, in this case, I use y here. Leyendo, you see? Because it's a combination of three vowels here, and this has to be y. For example, Luisa está creyendo, Luisa is believing, and this I big changes to y, or nosotros estamos oyendo. So you see, it's basically the same, but remember, if the verb is ending with er and ir, and you have two vowels at the end, make sure that you change the e by y. So you have leyendo with y, creyendo with y, oyendo with y. Now, in the second exception to the rule is that these verbs that they are irregular in the present tense, like pedir, when you conjugate pedir, you say yo pido. You see, you don't say pedo, you say pido. So in this case, these verbs like pedir, seguir, or servir, when you form the gerund, you will see that the e changes to I. So you say yo pido, right? When you form the present progressive, you have to say yo estoy pidiendo, no pidiendo, pidiendo. Juan está siguiendo, siguiendo, following, he is following. Luisa está sirviendo, Luisa is serving. So in those cases, remember, when the verb is irregular in the present tense, the e changes to I. The present progressive, the gerund, is going to also do that. It's going to also change the e by I. Okay? Now, for example, we have situations like I am working, he is traveling, or we are eating. So, you know, remember, the present tense is used for situations that we use every day, or we do every day, or situations that are happening right now. But if you want to give this idea of happening in this moment, in those cases, you use the present progressive. So I work, you know, in this for this company. But if you wanna express this idea that you're doing right now, you're gonna say yo estoy trabajando ahora. You know, in this case, you indicate that you are doing it right now. So in this case, for example, you have situations like yo trabajo todos los días, I work every day, or if you wanna give this idea of doing it right now at this moment, you will say yo estoy trabajando ahora, or yo estoy trabajando esta semana. The difference between English and Spanish about this is that in both languages we use the two tenses. Basically is the same. The only thing Spanish is more flexible with this, in the sense that in many situations that in English you use the present progressive referring right now, in Spanish you can also use the regular tense. In Spanish is not a clear difference between the use of the regular present and the present progressive. The only thing is that when you use the present progressive, you give this idea of doing it right now in this moment, you know, but you can use either one. Another difference that is it happens in Spanish is that the present progressive in English can be used for the future. Sometimes people say like I am visiting my sister next week. In Spanish, that will be impossible. You know, the present progressive has to be used for something that you do right now, but not in the future. In Spanish, if you say yo estoy visitando a mi hermana la semana que viene, it's incorrect. It's incorrect because the present progressive cannot be referred to the future. Has to be referring to the something that is happening right now. So that's the main difference between the use of Spanish and English. English allows this, and Spanish will not you will not be able to do that in Spanish. Anyway, you have here tú viajas todos los años, you travel every year, or if you want to put it in the present progressive, you say tú estás viajando hoy, you are traveling today. Okay? So it's more in this moment. Ella come en ese restaurante todos los días. She eats in that restaurant every day. And if you want to put it in the present progressive, you will say ella está comiendo ahora. She is eating right now. Okay. Now, again, this present progressive, well, we will see it later when we continue. If you continue taking class of Spanish, we will see it later when we work with the direct and indirect object pronouns. You will see some characteristics this tense has when you try to compress sentences. But at this point, just remember what I said. Make sure that you use it when you wanna stress that the situation is happening right now. And don't forget, do not use it referring to the future. Now, in this chapter, we also have some verbs that are used very often in Spanish. They're very important. They are also irregular. So in this case, these verbs, we use them a lot. For example, preferir, I prefer to do this. You prefer to do that. And the way we conjugate preferir is yo prefiero, tú prefieres, él prefiere, nosotros preferimos, vosotros preferís, ellos prefieren. So these verbs, as you see, they are a little bit irregular because the e changes to ie. And another one that we have in the same group is querer. So this verb is also used very often in Spanish, which means to want. I want, you want, he wants. So in Spanish, when you conjugate querer, you have quiero, quieres, quiere, queremos, queréis, and quiere. So this verb is very common, but again, is irregular. So you don't say quiero, you say quiero, quieres, quiere. And then we have the difference between the verb saber and conocer. These verbs is like the verb to be that splits into different verbs, but in this case both means to know. But in Spanish, saber is used when you know how to do something, when you know how to speak a language, when you know how to fix a car, when you know how to whatever. And conocer is when you know something because you are familiar with, this city, this person, whatever. So just remember, if you say something like yo sé cocinar, you use saber because it's you know how to cook. So in this case, yo sé cocinar means I know how to cook. Marta sabe conducir. Marta knows how to drive. Nosotros sabemos pintar. We know how to paint. Okay? En conocer will be to be familiar with. For example, nosotros conocemos a Juan. Nosotros conocemos a Juan means we know John. We are familiar with him. We know him. Marta conoce París. Marta knows the city of Paris. Paris, right? So in this case, he's familiar with. O Luisa conoce ese restaurante. Luisa knows this restaurant. So you see, in this case, in this group, is because you are familiar with. You have been there, or you know the person, or whatever. Okay. Now we have, for example, the way we conjugate saber and conocer. Both verbs, they means to know, but remember when you conjugate saber, they both are irregular. So, but saber is yo sé, tú sabes, él, ella, usted sabe, nosotros sabemos, vosotros sabéis, ellos saben. Remember, this means to know, but means to know how to do something. Conocer is to be familiar with, and you conjugate yo conozco. Pay attention to the conozco, that's the way we say it. Tú conoces, él, ella, usted conoce, nosotros conocemos, vosotros conocéis, ellos, ellas conocen. Okay? Now, another thing that I want to mention today is a group of words that they have the same etymology, the same origin, but in English they're ending with ify. For example, certify, clarify, classify, codify, falsify. All these words, they have the equivalent in Spanish, but the ending in Spanish is icar. So it's falsificar, clarificar, clasificar, codificar, falsificar, glorificar, gratificar, justificar, and many more. Okay, so just remember these endings, they can help you to identify words in Spanish that are very similar. So the only thing in English have this ending. In Spanish we have ificar, okay, certificar, clarificar, and so on. This will help you probably to get more words in Spanish. Now, let's finish the chapter with some review. And remember, I know, you can translate that into different ways. You can say yo sé or yo conozco. Remember, yo sé is when you want to say I know how to do something, I know how to speak a language. But if you translate yo conozco, you are saying I know, I know this person, I know this place, and so on. Now, in the second situation, you have she knows Peter. So you see, in this case, you are saying that you are familiar with Peter, right? In this case, you should translate that as ella conoce a Pedro. Remember, I use a because in Spanish, when you refer to a person, you have to use an a. So she knows, so has to be ella conoce because she's familiar with a because you refer to a person, and then Pedro. Okay. He doesn't know Maria. Well, in this case, he doesn't know Maria. He is going to be él. Doesn't is going to be no. Know is going to be conocer because it's to be familiar with. And then you have to use a because it's a person, and then Maria. So the translation for that is ella no conoce a María. Él no conoce a María. Now, we know. So we know, again, could be both. Could be nosotros sabemos or could be nosotros conocemos. Because in this case, we don't know if you were referring to know how or to know someone. Now, the next one is we know Mexico. So we know Mexico is because we are familiar with, in this case, it's not a person, it's a country. So the translation should be we, nosotros or nosotras, conocemos México. México. In this case, we don't use a because it's not a person. Nosotras or nosotros conocemos México. Okay? Now, does she knows Marco? In this case, it's a question. So in this case, should be ¿conoce ella a Marcos? ¿Conoce ella a Marcos? So in this case, remember, I use a because Marcos is a person, and I use conocer because it's to be familiar with. Okay. Now, querer and preferir, don't forget to, for example, querer means to want, preferir means to prefer, and don't forget the present progressive, yo estoy cansado, tú estás estudiando, and so on. Now, for example, how do you say I in Spanish? Yo. How do you say she? Ella. How do you say we masculine? Nosotros. How do you say they feminine? Ellas. How do you say I am in New York, referring to location? Yo estoy en Nueva York. How do you say I am sick, a temporary situation? Yo estoy sick is enfermo, enfermo. Or if you're a woman, you can say enferma. How do you say she is in Rome? She is in Rome. In this case, is location. She is, ella está en Roma, because it's location. Now, how do you say I am in Brooklyn and Rose is in New York? So in this case, I am will be yo estoy en Brooklyn and Rosa, is in New York. Está en Nueva York. Yo estoy en Brooklyn y Rosa está en Nueva York. How do you say we are here? We are here. Well, we could be nosotros o nosotras, or estamos, because it's location, here, aquí, aquí, here is aquí. Nosotros o nosotras estamos aquí. How do you say They are there. There is allí o allá. You can use either word. Allí o allá means there. So they are there. It will be ellos o ellas están allí o allá. Hmm? Well, imagine that you have a conversation with a friend of yours, and the person says, "Hello, hola, Rose, Rosa, how are you today? How are you today?" Well, if it's a friend of yours, you want to say, ¿Cómo estás hoy? ¿Cómo estás hoy? The person says, I am fine. And you? And what about you? Yo estoy bien. ¿Y tú? Yo estoy bien. ¿Y tú? I am okay. Yo estoy bien. Okay, yo estoy bien. The person says, where are you? ¿Dónde estás tú? ¿O dónde estás? The person says, I am in New York. Yo estoy en Nueva York. And the person says, what about you? Where are you? ¿Y tú? ¿Dónde estás? The person says, I am in Spain. Yo estoy en España. The person says, okay, vale. The person says, see you later. Te veo más tarde. Now, how do you say in Spanish to work? Trabajar. How do you say I work? Yo trabajo. How do you say I am working right now? Yo estoy trabajando ahora. How do you say I don't work? Yo no trabajo. How do you say I am not working right now? Yo no estoy trabajando ahora. How do you say to drink? Beber. How do you say she drinks water? Ella bebe agua. How do you say she is drinking water? Ella está bebiendo agua. How do you say to study? Estudiar. How do you say we study Spanish? Nosotros estudiamos español. How do you say we are studying Spanish? Nosotros estudiamos español. How do you say we are not studying French? Nosotros no estudiamos francés. What about, are you studying Italian? Are you studying Italian? Well, in a situation like this, you can say, ¿estudias italiano? Or you can say, ¿estás estudiando italiano? Or you can say, ¿tú estás estudiando italiano? Remember, I stress the verb, okay? How do you say to speak? To speak, hablar. How do you say she speaks Italian? Ella habla italiano. How do you say she is speaking in Italian? Ella está hablando en italiano. How do you say we are not speaking in French? Nosotros no estamos hablando en francés. How do you say to read? Leer. How do you say we read? Nosotros leemos. How do you say we are reading? Nosotros estamos leyendo. How do you say we're not reading the book? Nosotros no estamos leyendo el libro. How do you say to eat? Comer. How do you say I eat salad? Yo como ensalada. How do you say I am not eating salad? Yo no estoy comiendo ensalada. Now, how do you say to prefer? Preferir. How do you say I prefer this car? Yo prefiero este carro. How do you say I prefer to speak in Spanish? Yo prefiero hablar en español. How do you say to know? How do you say to know Peter? Yo conozco a Pedro. How do you say I don't know Marta? I don't know Marta. Yo no conozco a Marta. How do you say I know how to dance? Yo sé bailar. How do you say I know New York? Yo conozco Nueva York. How do you say I am knowing this person? I am knowing this person. So in this case, you use the present progressive. So you say yo estoy conociendo a esta persona. How do you say I am finishing this class? Yo estoy terminando esta clase.